Hey, entrepreneurs, Susan here. I hope you're having an incredible day. And this episode, I'm just going to jump right in. What's in it for you? You are going to learn what the unfair advantage is for founders. And the founder I'm about to interview, he was with Rupa Health and he was employee six. That company went from 20 million to over $100 million valuation while he was there. He left to join another startup. And from there, decided, you know what? I'm going to take my skills and I'm going to go out and I'm going to start not one company, I'm going to start two companies. And so Cody Schneider, he is a serial entrepreneur. He's an innovator. He's an AI powered content marketing expert, I would say genius. I'll go as far as to say that. And as founder of Draft Horse AI and Swell AI, he has helped numerous companies exponentially grow their businesses by leveraging AI to automate content production workflows, and named one of business.com's top 25 marketers to watch. Cody gained his experience helping scale startups from the ground up through strategic content strategies. And we get into the weeds about what to do, creating content, deploying content, and the guts that it takes to say, hey, you know what? I am leaving the epicenter of startups, San Francisco, and I'm going to go live in Denver while I'm building AI companies. It is such a fascinating show, and I learned a lot from it, even though I have a MarTech background. And he shares some secrets onto getting, page one, page two of Google like overnight. It's absolutely amazing. And so I hope you enjoy this episode. And don't forget, follow the show, like the show. We just moved over to be part of the C-Suite network, C-Suite Media. And so we are growing this audience. And the way you can help me with this show is make sure you subscribe, follow us on social, on all of the channels at Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. And if you have a comment or suggest a guest, go to susansly.com and check it out. So with that, let's get into this episode with the one and only Cody Schneider. This is Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that brings the no-nonsense truth of what is required to start, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Susan Sly. Well, what is up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs, wherever you are in the world? I hope you're having an incredible day. And before we got started with the show today, my guest was just, we were talking about all sorts of different topics and really and truly, this show and what it's about, and imagining for a moment that you get to sort of sit down and behind closed doors, hear what founders really talk about. And so we are going to get raw and real pretty fast. And the first question I want to ask you, Cody, is you just relocated from the Bay Area. And as a startup founder, as a tech founder, especially AI, there are different schools of thought. And one being like, you're not going to grow a big company unless you're based in the Bay Area. So what's your sentiment on that?
Yeah, for sure. We're seeing this across the board with every company right now is like global talent is becoming this high leverage point. So everybody's hiring offshore team members that are based out of whatever geography, as long as they can get the job done, right? Like that's all that matters anymore. So I think that's a larger thread. Also, like augmenting these team members with AI tools has suddenly made, an okay player like incredible. And then even further from that, if you're an engineer and you're powering yourself with Copilot or any of the, Cursor SO is becoming like the standard IDE for all of these kind of technical founders. And then also on the marketing side, on the growth side, it's like all of that knowledge I can build even just these small agents. We're working on this right now, but cold email is like a part of our go-to-market strategy. We're just building this agent that can basically like respond to these people and manage that multiple inboxes simultaneously. So I think that's like this larger trend that's happening is like this kind of dissemination of these ideas and the talent pool. It's not as concentrated. With all that said, simultaneously, it's like our friends are running this company called SF Compute. They basically rent out GPU time at scale, and then they get a year contract as an example, and then they sell out bursts on those machines to people that are doing training. So say you're a researcher at Oxford or another company, or you're like an early stage company that's trying to train like your own foundational model or do fine tuning. You would go to them, and like all of that is happening in the Bay Area still. Like that is where kind of all of that, I would say like hard technical talent is still there. And like we periodically just fly out to SF to see, friends and honestly just get a pulse on what's going on. So I think there is kind of this contraction back there is what I'm trying to say. Like we're seeing, even people that moved to Austin during the pandemic now return and go back just because the energy there is so, I mean, it's it's just pure, it's just raw, pure like energy, right? And you can't fake that. You can't mimic it online in the same way whatsoever. So I think we're seeing people, still maybe they're based somewhere else, but they're spending some time there more and more, especially with all the movement that's happening. So.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a trend. I mean, the people, during the pandemic, there was this exodus and a lot of things changed. And, I was just talking about before we got in the show, I just got back from there last night and I was at a mixer like down in the, downtown core. And there were founders who were like, 23. And then there were founders who are like my age and the energy and the funders and that epicenter. I don't think it's going to change for a while. I think that the big thing is what made you decide to leave? And
Yeah.
we're on almost 400 episodes of the show, and I have founders who are like, we're never leaving the Bay Area. It could be like a civil war, and I'm never leaving. And then I have founders who've left. But like you said, they're still going back and forth, but it's like they're blooming where they're planted. But what made you decide to leave?
Yeah, probably quality of life. I mean, for everybody, I think it was that. It's not really a good answer to be totally honest. I look like I talked with my girlfriend about this on a almost daily basis now, where we like miss just being there. There's something magic about it, especially now during this time. So I think in the next couple of years we'll probably go back. We just wanted access to the mountains and it's like a big enough city where things are going on, but there are the highs and lows in San Francisco, but the highs are so high that it's, I mean, and also to the point, it's like, here's this 23-year-old, he just got, written a $7 million seed check and he's about to, basically try to create, consulting this company that's building like an interior design software for, it basically you can like draw a floor plan and then it will just like visualize it like in real time through the browser. Like, it's just crazy, stuff that that type of that doesn't really happen anywhere else in the world. And if you still look at the funding checks that are written globally, like and compare them city by city, San Francisco and just the Bay Area in general is almost double what the next place is, which is New York City, right? So again, there's just that is where a lot of this economic energy exists, and due to that, you get it's just a kind of a magnet and a gravity to pull in the best founders in the world. So there's that. Having those ties there is super valuable and important, and I think people are realizing that and seeing that. And there's also just something powerful about you go to dinner one night randomly and a friend of a friend you get introduced to, and that turns into a business opportunity for both of you where there's like a symbiotic relationship there. So yeah, not a good answer. There's days where I'm like, okay, we just need to go back and lay flags down. So, but
yeah, and everyone knows if they've been listening for a long time, like I just lay it out in the show, right? And so when we bought this house in Whitefish, Montana, of all places, and I know you know where that is. And for the listeners, the global audience, it's like an hour south of the Canadian border, but it's in the mountains. And we'd been like vacationing in Telluride every year. And I was like, let's go to Telluride and, everything. Phoenix is now one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, top 5 in terms of population. And there's a massive startup ecosystem here. And there's a lot of VC money pouring in from the Bay Area. It's very common to be going back and forth. And then we buy this house and it's like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And but yeah, I hear you, and it's an interesting decision, but there is a lot
it's basically look where Alaska has a direct flight out of San Francisco too, and that's where people are moving. We always joke like the Northwest, like, so I'm from Coeur d'Alene originally, which is like 2 hours from the Canadian border. It's like almost directly west from where Whitefish, Montana is, and direct flight into SF. Boise has one. Like all of these cities, any of these cities on the West Coast that has them, that has a quality of life. And again, Phoenix has one as well. That's where you're seeing this like crossover start to happen, and just kind of this capital movement as well. Like just all of those ecosystems from a technology standpoint are, increasing. I think a bigger piece of this too is this vintage of entrepreneur. You no longer are constrained to learn all of these skill sets in that location. Like you used to go out to SF because that's where people knew how to do good growth, right? And now, you just see basically everything that you could try to learn, what you can find on like some YouTube channel with, 500 views per video, but it's some guy going deep on here's cold email strategies, right? And like what we're seeing work. And anyway, so I think that those constraints on the education component, like it's no longer just siloed there. It's now this very like global thing, as long as you're looking hard enough. And I mean, you hear all these stories like Instantly AI is an example where it's like the two co-founders met on a Reddit sub. One of them was, engineer. The other one was on the growth side. And I think they got to 5 million ARR in like 18 months, just using their own cold email software to get like initial customers. Like that's, when you think about what's capable now and kind of the pace that it's moving at this global scale, it's crazy. And, you hear the story from them and it's like they never met in person for the first 12 months of them working together, right? So it's just crazy.
I heard a story yesterday of these two guys and they randomly met and they decided to start this sleep company, and they were two coders. And so they're like, we're going to go all in. We're just raising like the most minimal amount of money. Then we're going to apply for grants, non-dilutive funding. And they go to Peru and they just code for a year. And so one of the funders for the company is like, why Peru? And they're like, because we can live on $10 a day. And I'm like, was your internet quality good in Peru? Like, I don't know, but
it's crazy.
And to your point that there's this myth, especially starting a tech company, like your undergrad degree, I believe, is in economics, right? Like, there's a myth that to start a tech company, you have to, know how to code in Python, and you have to know what key value pairs are, and you have to know all this stuff. And you actually don't, but you have to be able to know where to find that talent, even if it's on a global scale. Okay, so you are like employee 6 at Rupa, and that company, while you're there, it's fire. Like
crazy,
it goes to a 9-figure valuation. They're still a leader in that space. And being employee 6, firstly, how did you end up at Rupa?
Yeah, great question. So my friend Kobe Conrad, he's still the head of growth there. So he recruited me. He basically called me up. I was actually just like doing consulting and living out of a van with my like friend chasing snow all winter. And he's like, hey, like I'm working at this company. It's the fastest growing thing I've ever seen. Like he's like, I just turned on ads and like here's basically the results that we get. So I was honestly, in all transparency, when he initially called, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. I was, just kind of living a slower life, and then looked at the data over a weekend, and I was like, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. My background was in B2B, and so kind of knew how to go after this market. And called him on a Monday, and I was like, I'm in. I had a call with the CEO, Tara, on Wednesday. Thursday, got an offer, and that next Monday, I flew out to San Francisco and got to work. But yeah, I mean, employee 6 was super early. They already had word of mouth, and I think that was like the thing that was most intriguing was, okay, they had this natural growth that was happening at like 2% compounding month over month word of mouth. Like what happens when we actually layer on growth on top of it, right? And so that's what we did. And I think we were compounding about 23% compounding month over month growth that was the average the time I was there. And so anyway, it took them from like a $20 million valuation to 110. Our big thing that we realized with this audience is they're practitioners, right? So think doctors, physicians, of any type. They are super hard traditionally to market to, because anybody that has like a higher economic status, which they do, they're getting ads constantly from all angles. And so we realized really early on, we were going to have to make like a media arm of the company that would be like both this cross section of entertainment and education. And that's really what we focused on. So we built this whole, we built out a podcast for them, built out a live course series that we did both of those on a weekly basis. But we ended up taking the podcast from like 0 to a top 20 medical podcasts in the US in about 6 months. So I had no idea what podcasting was when I first started there. But that's kind of my role, is like, hey, here's all these puzzles, like figure those out and put it into a process and delegate to team members. But yeah, so what we realized from this though is like, hey, we can make this piece of pillar content repurpose it into all of these different media forms, depending on like where our target customers were spending time online, which was we found to be like Facebook, Instagram, and like, you know, other social channels like YouTube was a huge one as well. And then grow like newsletters on the backs of that. We ended up scraping all of like every position in the US's email and sequencing them into a newsletter that was like promoting the show. And yeah, there's happy to dive deeper on any of that. It was wild, but while I was there, I think we went from like, it was like 6 people to when I left, it was right around like 70. And that was in like about like 15 months, if I remember correctly. So just, you can imagine the growing pains that happen during that process. And this was kind of pre-AI as well, right? So you're like having to do human, you know, human scaling at the same time. And you could just feel the seams kind of like tearing as this thing evolved. But yeah, that's really the high level of it all.
Well, it's so genius, Cody, too, because one of the questions, especially with B2C, is going to be like, where are you going to get these customers, and how many customers do you need to cover your burn? And, you know, what is your CAC to LTV, like your customer for people like, I get this is like the number one complaint. Susan, you use acronyms. We don't know what you're saying. So let me use customer acquisition cost to lifetime value of that customer. And so like one of the things I did, Cody, with the Pause, my new company, is, you know, while we were spinning up a DevOps team and we had the vision, the first thing I did is I took one of my assets at my media company. I was like, okay, we're starting a TikTok channel. We're starting, we're starting on Instagram. We're getting a newsletter going. And people are like, you don't have the product yet. And I'm like, you don't understand. You've got to build the community and just create like ridiculously good content and to drive that, like even, you know,
you also have own distribution
classes
from day one, right? So it's like,
yes.
You know, just to sorry to interject, but I'm helping a friend do this right now. He's building a software for therapists, and he's based out of Canada. What they're focusing on is basically building like an AI companion. So it's like record all the conversations and then make this like HIPAA compliant version that they can go and query against and be like, hey, like, you know, what are the common threads? Like, how can we improve and kind of tailoring this? But for him, he's like, okay, well, what if I get every, you know, therapist in all of Canada on an email newsletter by the end, you know, and he's going to do it in like 6 months. And all they're doing is distributing the show to it. They're not even, you know, out of stealth yet. They're not public. But what this turns into, as soon as they have product, they already have cultivated an audience that they've built all this trust with, and they just overnight will turn on that switch and, you know, see revenues occur. And I think that paradigm like shift, that mental shift is happening like across all of these industries. Another, I think, larger thing that's starting to happen is like we saw UGC be this massive lever for, you know, D2C, right? And you know, what naturally happens is it starts in D2C and it trickles down into B2B, and we're just starting to see that occur where it's like you have B2B influencers now. Like what does that even mean? First off, I think for a lot of people, they're like, I don't even know how to make content with that. But what it turns into is like, you know, people like you interviewing industry experts about, you know, knowledge or topics that they have expertise in that nobody else does. Taking that and you like chop it up in all these clips, schedule it out across your socials. And, you know, again, you can 0 to 1 these companies in this way that previously was just impossible, right? And so I need it at its peak when we were at Rupa. I think we had a team of like 20-ish people between like contractors, full time, et cetera, that were all working on the content team for, you know, blogs, for clips, for everything across the board. And it's like now when you augment you know, really good people with AI tools, you can have a single person and they can basically function like that 20-person team. Like, what does that mean? It changes the whole idea. And like, I think for a lot of companies, like they're starting to realize like, hey, media is the only way that I'm going to create differentiation, especially with ads tracking, like basically not working anymore. It's like we're going back to our roots of traditional marketing. Like, how do you build brand? How do you build trust? How do you build, you know, relationships with these people? And so they're realizing, and we're seeing people, you know, I feel like 5 years ago, this was a weird, you know, it's kind of a strong opinion to have, but like every company is going to become a media company, and that is really what's happening. So, but yeah.
Well, one of the things I say is that every company is going to become an AI company, because if you're using AI tools, and I've been very vocal about this, as an AI ethicist, like if you're using AI tools, you're an AI company. I don't care what sector you're in and who on your board actually understands AI, because we don't need a board
Totally.
of people who are in their 70s who, still don't even know how to use Microsoft Word. Like it's like this is a new era. And I love what you said, and I hope everyone is really digesting this, is like, just, to put it in a formula, you're creating content that is interesting, attractive, and informative to your ideal customer. You're pushing it out to them, either acquiring the list, or you're going organically, which is, phase one, low budget, no budget, directly, pushing out, on wherever social channels that those people are. And then, going to that as your content is getting refined, going to the next level. And then whether you do, podcast, blogs, all the different things, LinkedIn newsletter, those are excellent. And so from that perspective, building out community, I'd love for you to riff off, because I want to get into how you left Rupa. I cannot emphasize what you're saying enough, because I watch my friends on LinkedIn, like Zach Klima. I had him on the show from Waytime. Shouts out to you, Zach. Like, he's crushing on LinkedIn. He's like, everything he does, he makes sure someone takes a video of him. Like, he's pushing out the content. I'm the exact same way. What advice do you want to give to a founder who's listening, is like, but I don't feel comfortable doing that, Cody?
I mean, you're a founder. That's all I have to say. Like, you're already going in front of people and asking them for millions of dollars. So if you can't, if you can't play this game, you probably need to pick another, lane to go in. To be frank, and I mean, I think most founders, like, if you're going to actually do this, like, you're a cult leader in disguise, right? Like, that's really what foundership is you're you're saying, take your shoes off, grab my hands, drink this, and repeat after me, and then trying to convince the world of this like thing. That's the only way to bend reality and like will your non-existent thing into existence. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing for founders is that's the kind of the philosophical piece. The actual practical piece of this is like reducing the chance of burnout when it comes to content. So that's actually what is most likely to happen for people, is that they do it for maybe 60 days and then they're like, I can't do it anymore, right? And it's like, in 60 days, this will make zero impact for your business. We're talking about time horizons that are like at least 12 months plus, right? And
Yeah.
so what it comes down to is like, okay, well, what's this small bite-sized thing that I can do? And then how do I automate that as much as possible? And then like layer on these other components. And so again, when we talk about this, this whole process, like make pillar content. So say like as a founder, you're already doing customer interviews. Just take those customer interviews, put them in public and distribute them to your target audience. And like that alone will create trust. I was doing consulting and just to give an anecdotal story about this, I was working with this company. This was like years ago, probably like two or 3 years ago now. They were building a CRM for insurance agents. And what ended up happening with them is nobody knew who they were. Very traditional handshake industry, right? And we're like, okay, we're just going to build a show, and all we're going to do is interview insurance agents on how they like run their book of business and make more money. Like, just basically, it's just a business podcast about the insurance business. And what they, in 12 months, basically got the entire, basically every insurance agent in the US to be listening to the show. The founders go to a conference, people are coming up to her and they're like, Sarah, we love what you're doing. Oh my God, and contrast that to a year previously, no one who knew who they were. And they're like, someone please talk to us so that we can get like feedback on this product that we're building. And so I think, again, to get back to like, you need to do things that have like sustainability and longevity. I don't know. I don't think this is actually the first thing you should do. Like, if you start a company, like, you need to do way more transactional focused marketing in the beginning, because you're just trying to get, default alive. Right. And so that looks like paid ads, that looks like cold email, that looks like cold DMs, any of these things where it's like, I do an action now and revenue happens, in the next 2 weeks type of thing. In contrast, like when we're talking about building these media orgs out, like that is something where it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's going to be this upfront investment for this, but I'm going to amortize that over the lifetime of the company. And so like, it's basically you're fighting. And really what's happening here is that when you look at like ads as an example, right? Like Google ads. So, and I can use our company as an example for this, but so with Swell, like our CPC a year ago for our like highest performing, highest converting keywords was about 10 cents. Fast forward, that same keyword, we're paying $1.20 for a click now. Like, luckily we get more, efficient in our conversion and all of that. And like, there's learning that happens. But So that's traditionally called like the law of terrible click-throughs, right? Andrew
Yeah.
Chen kind of pioneered this idea. And like what this is based on is like as arbitrage gets identified, like more money will flow into that area. And so because there's a limited inventory, prices basically go up infinitely, right? So what you have to do as a founder is you have to realize, okay, cool. Like, especially if you raise capital, as soon as you find, okay, I can spend $1 here and $5 comes out, right, on Google Ads, like that's my ROAS basically for like, and what we're looking at is CAC versus the customer lifetime value. Like what is my basically my CAC versus how much I'm going to make off them in their lifetime. And then you're going to try to spend as much money as you can, as fast as you can in that space. And then simultaneously be spinning up this media component of your company, because that's how you're going to fight the law of like that your costs are basically going to increase to acquire customers over time. So what you're trying to do is keep your CAC as close to what it is previously, or you have it even decrease over time, right? And again, I describe it as digital gravity. Like when you build content and you build media, what you're really doing is building like digital gravity on the internet. And what does that mean? Like when I build content, I'm building digital mass. The more mass I have online, the more gravity I have in my niche. And the more gravity I have, the more inbound I naturally get, right? Like the different way to visualize a funnel. The funnel is a terrible way to actually talk about how people interpret and think, like how they actually go through a buying journey. They don't go in the top and like work their way down, right? What's really happening is like at different points in their rotation around a company, they're like more likely to buy than others. And any salesperson will know this just intrinsically as well, right? Like look at velocity is such an important part in that first part of that sales like process. You're going to get them if you don't get them quick enough, like they're going to go out of orbit. Maybe you can get them back in 3 months or 6 months or whatever that rotation is. But again, what we're trying to do with all of this is basically build as much just organic like inbound as possible. And we can do that through content that is valuable, that is insightful, that is interesting to our clients. And this isn't, we don't need to overthink it. Like you're interviewing customers, record those conversations, put them out in public. Like you do that and you're going to be in the top, 10% of companies, especially startups that have raised money and that have, have a great product and they're seeing some inkling of product market fit. So yeah, happy to dive deeper on any of that, but.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that insight too, Cody, and like where to spend the money, what to focus on. And the thing I will throw in there is like have a place that is an attractive house for your content to live, because it's not like for someone listening here, they're like, what in the world are they talking about? And you go back and listen to this again, or you watch on YouTube and you're like taking notes and commenting and doing all this stuff. It's like, okay, your content's going to live somewhere. It might live on your website, ideally that you have a website. It might live on LinkedIn, it might live on wherever it's going to live, but you've got to capture those leads. And when I look at launches and I look at some of the best companies that have done like B2C, there's also this virility to it. Like, how many ads did you see for Chat GPT? Right? But there
Totally.
was this virility, like, and a great question to say is, why aren't you using Chat GPT? So this is one of the things we say, like, we're still pre-launched in our product, but why aren't you using the pause? Like, why aren't you? Like, it just is so common sense. Like, why aren't you using Draft Horse? Why aren't you using Swell? Like, why aren't you using Rupa? Why not? And to create that virility, as you said with Rupa, it was like this organic word of mouth, and then you start to put some money behind it. It was like, oh my gosh. So you're in momentum and you leave this company. Like, what happened there?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So in all honesty, I got a job offer from. I was kind of at a crossroads. I was like, all right, I'm going to go found a company, or I'm going to go do one more, and then probably found a company. But I ended up working at this crypto startup. They were doing basically like those high yield savings accounts type things. The difference with this company that I was working at was they were doing non-custodial wallets. So you basically like had the rights to all of your keys. It wasn't like a liquidity pool that they were creating and then paying out based on that. So it was really interesting because it was like you could basically just like pull funds at any point with your keys. And so I looked at it. I thought it was really interesting. The founders were super smart. We ended up during that period. This was like the last crypto like bull market that happened a couple of years ago. Saw just insane growth. I basically all I did was like I made UGC ads, turned them on Facebook ads and Instagram ads, and like we tripled 3 months in a row. And then with the whole industry, the Terra Luna collapse happened and we thought we were insulated. They were like really, conscious of that from the beginning, and nobody was insulated. And so that market just absolutely got rug pulled. Um, so I was hired as the head of growth there. My philosophy with all companies is like, if you don't have a product and you don't have product market fit, you do not pay a head of growth, just full stop. The only reason for that, they're not there to kind of go out in the woods and do mushrooms with you and figure out we need to actually sell these people. Like their role is to basically take this thing that you've already, validated to some degree and, basically build out this growth engine for you. So I ended up going to the founder. I was like, hey, like if I was you, I would let me go. And so then over like a 2-week period, we kind of cycled me out. Yeah. So was doing consulting for some companies and knew I wanted to kind of build this next thing. And my co-founder at Swell, his name's Max Chahab. We met at Rupa Health. Actually, he was the first engineering hire. And so we had, been friendly through that kind of, since day one, because it was early, he knew everybody on the team, that type of deal. And we've been building side projects, just kind of, throwing random things out into the ether and making them go viral on like Hacker News and stuff like that, right? But had this idea I was doing some work for a client, and the podcast was a great vehicle for distribution for them. And I was like, hey, I think, AI is at this point now that we could basically make it kind of take a transcript and transform it into this output that we are trying to create, whether that be show notes, newsletters, blog posts, all these different content types. And so threw the idea past him. He was like, 100%, we could probably do that. That night, I think he stayed up just like the whole night, just pulled an all-nighter, cranked out the first version of the software. The first version was a Google Drive folder, and I like shared it with friends that had like podcasts for their companies. I was like, hey, like, just upload the MP3 files. We downloaded them manually. We'd run it locally on our machine. And I would like manually email them back the content when it was done. Right. And we got our first customers that way. And then, saw an opportunity to basically build this out. And so, web app launched in October of 2022. So it was right before ChatGPT, launched in that December period. And we were just positioned really well to ride that wave. So January hit and it was just, it was pure chaos, right? Just from a growth standpoint. So, it's kind of evolved now. We initially just started out with only writing, but we're working with like multimedia now. And actually we're realizing that really what people are wanting is basically a content marketing engine powered by AI, right? And it's like obvious in hindsight. And what that means is like, hey, what's a single platform that I can upload a long form piece of content? It makes all the clips. They can get scheduled out to social. It's publishing those to social. It's looking at the data, pulling back that like what's performing, and out of these 30 clips, which ones were the best performers. We go back to the back catalog, we find more like that, and it creates a growth flywheel, right? We can do that same thing with like, it writes newsletters so that here's this template that it needs to for the newsletter. Okay, cool. Sends that right directly to Beehive, or writes a blog post, send that right directly to Webflow, et cetera, right? So it's basically this platform that can kind of power a whole B2B marketing team and just a marketing team in general. So that's kind of where the product is getting like pulled towards now more and more. But again, it's first version was a Google Drive folder, right? So it's always wild to see your baby grow up and you're like, oh, I had no idea that like this is what it would evolve into. But
so did you bootstrap that company or did you raise
yeah,
money?
so we're self-funded. I had other companies that were cash flowing, and then Max had some just like basically secondaries from that he sold from previous companies that he was at. And so we had those annuities, and we're like, we didn't look like we needed money. And really all the cash in the initial stage that the company was making just went right back into growth. And so we basically rode that wave. I'm not, it's funny. I think that public sentiment, I'm pretty vocal on Twitter, and I hear a lot that like, oh, like they think I'm anti-VC, and I actually don't, like, that's not really my view. I just think that raising money doesn't make sense if you, like, for me, I only like raising money is for growth capital, right? The part, it's so cheap now to, again, go do mushrooms in the woods and figure out like what people want. I think that for us, it's something like if there's a clear path to making it $100 million a year, like ARR company, then it's like, no brainer, go do this. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that, which is actually really interesting. Right now it's probably like a 10 million ARR company. Like that's where it will end up, kind of its like threshold. But it's the big thing that we're just realizing that like, so for example, there's these digital asset management systems or these massive, basically imagine Google Drive, but for enterprise, right? For the audience, and huge industry. Nobody really talks about it, multi-billion dollar industry growing like 40% like CAGR, year over year. And all it is, like, if you talk to anybody that uses any of these tools, and some of our clients use them, they're like, hey, I can't find anything and I don't know where anything is. I know we've made all this media. I know it exists somewhere. There's no way for us to identify or find it. And we're realizing that Swell is kind of positioned really well to be a tool for them, where it's like, okay, I can have my entire back catalog of information, and this could be both written and, audio, video content. So it could be reports. It could be, anything that is my internal, information, my differentiating content. I could have that in a library, and then hypothetically, query against that entire back catalog and be like, and also have the AI do this for them automatically. So like TikTok just released their, it's basically their like trending keywords API. So, instantly we realized, oh, okay, like we can go and see this is trending right now. Can we go to our back catalog and find like related related clips to this from the entire back catalog, surface those clips for a human, and they're like, yes, no, they get scheduled out and then they get posted. And, again, it's augmenting what these teams were already doing. And so, yeah, that's a long-winded way to answer no. We haven't raised money yet, but not against it. So
it's genius, and it's needed, because again, like going back to, there's only so many hours in the day. And I even look at myself, like running a startup, and I can create content all day long, but I have a team that does a lot of what you're talking about, and it's a lot of work. Right. But then again, like you said, with the open source APIs, like, okay, here's TikTok's keywords. I got to ask you, what do you think is going to happen to TikTok? We're going to get a little political just for a minute.
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
real entrepreneurship, but if we were having a cocktail or a coffee, I'd be like, Cody, what's going to happen?
I think they're going to, I think there's strong tailwinds that they're going to ban it. Like, my personal views is that it's definitely, I mean, just based off the data that we've seen and like friends that have worked in, companies related or, in that area. It sounds like they're using it to suppress specific content and amplify others. And like, so I think that's a huge piece. I mean, my girlfriend used to work in the semiconductor space, like specifically with like the main company that's based out of Taiwan. So like just knowing all the political like factors that are going in around this, and like what, especially with this kind of AI revolution that's happening on the chip manufacturing part, like we can't even manufacture chips like in the US, right? Like they're just starting to build a facility like down in Phoenix, actually, which is really interesting. I'm also like, why are you building a manufacturing facility? But I think the larger trend here is that I think politically it just has negative. There's also like, if you look at all the cash that's being thrown around right now by like, for example, Facebook and like the lobby groups that are behind this, like, for Zuck, this is a absolutely banger deal, right? He's like, okay, you're going to tell me that here's all, and their products are now at a place. I mean, Google's doing the same thing as well. YouTube Shorts is like taking over. They're all, I think what, TikTok, in my opinion, has done and changed the industry is it made For You page content the standard, and it makes sense, right? Like, their goal of all social accounts is to keep people on platform for as long as possible so they can sell more ad space. They're just like, they're monetizing your attention, right? So if they see that For You page content keeps you on platform longer, like, of course they're going to do that. And you see this across all channels, right? Like Twitter is doing this now, LinkedIn is doing this now, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. You don't need to know anybody or like have a social graph to like know what you're going to be interested in. It's just going to show you stuff. And then based off consumption, it's going to show you more, right? So I think that, it feels like all of these things are pointing in the direction like there's going a bigger play will be like, does the EU like also move on this? And then if the answer is yes, then I think it's an inevitability then at that point. But I don't know. I don't have any crystal ball. I think for right now I'm telling companies like, hey, continue to invest in it. Like we were seeing, you have one viral video and it's just like, sweet, we just added 500 customers, right? Like that type of thing. And so it's still a great channel right now. I just would diversify across all of these other accounts. And it's so easy to do that anymore. It's like, I can use the same video for TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels. And then if, it's a huge shift in the market happens where one of those channels is no longer there. It's not that I go to zero, right? But it's like all marketing strategy. Like in the beginning, it's like figure out my wedge into a market. Like I'm going to focus on one or two things. And then once I've got those locked in, then I layer on another one and I layer on another one and I layer on another one. And it just, it continues on. This is that same strategy just applied on the social scale and like, with social accounts and social channels. So.
Yeah, so it's so interesting to really look at it because you mentioned like the tailwinds of, is it going to exist? But then you have this tremendous user base and this pushback and the value in the company. I think it's a prime target for acquisition. And we look at, when Elon acquired Twitter, we look at, other groups that are out there that give them an instant head to head with Facebook. And Meta is not popular right now. I just did a post on this. Like, don't create, no offense, I was raised by a single dad, but don't create an AI board. It's only all guys, like middle-aged guys, not even necessarily like, people on the bleeding edge of AI. And I'm like, really, Zuckerberg? Like, what? What does your wife think of that? What did Priscilla say? Like, I don't know. Anyway, so my point being is, I think just as much as money is going behind the lobbyists, I think the election's going to have a lot of say in it. I think that the users are going to have a lot of say. Like, why do we still have meme coins that, have no apparent backed value, but so many people own them, right? So it's going to be really interesting. And I value your opinion on that. And we'll see how that plays out. Cody, final, I look at you're building Swell and you're building Draft Horse, right? Like, and there's this, like there's a saying that you can't put your feet in two canoes, right? Because you're just like, so how do you navigate your day?
Yeah,
Building two
majority of my time
companies?
is spent on Swell at this point. So Draft Horse, just for context for everybody, we built an internal tool to do programmatic SEO for like landing pages and also blog posts.
Mhm.
I was talking about it in public. People were like, "I want that thing." So again, over a weekend, we basically cloned the code base of Swell, and then that was Draft Horse, bought the domain, and it ended up going viral on Twitter, and we got to 10,000 MRR in 30 days, just entirely organic. It was insane. So we're like, oh, maybe this is actually like more of a product pull. And so we focused energy there. What we found though is that for a lot of people, it's just like a data dump that was occurring. And so they would come in, they'd write 1,000 posts, and then you have 1,000 posts. You don't need more basically at that point, right? And so our churn was just crazy. It wasn't a sustainable company. We still have a great customer base, and like it's we still maintain the code base, et cetera, because there's still people that use it and it's effective for them. With all that said though, like what will in all reality probably happen is like a version of Draft Horse will be spun back into Swell. It started in Swell initially. That's like where we baited it with some customers and then we spun it out. The bigger thing that we're seeing and where this gets way more interesting is with Draft Horse currently, it's writing off of the general knowledge of the LLM. And what actually is way more effective is when you write off of like expert knowledge, right? So for example, like even if I am just writing off of a keyword, like, hey, Google ads for apartments, write me an article, right? The more like a piece of content that's more likely to rank, if I say I prompted like the general AI to do that with its general knowledge versus, okay, I go scrape what's ranking currently on page 1 and 2. I put that in the context window, and then I'm like, okay, now AI, here's your source information, right? Based off of that. And we're going to see that content that where it's writing off of the source information is going to perform like way more effectively at getting organic traffic. And so like that's probably what this will evolve into, is where it's like you give us a list of target keyword phrases or titles that you're trying to write for, it goes and it like scrapes all the source information. You've got a brand voice document is what we're just calling this. So like for every company that's starting to use AI with content, it's like, how do I make it sound the same and be consistent? So for every company, I say, hey, you have a brand style guide, like just use that same idea, but here's this brand voice document. It's basically a set of prompts or some fine tuning that occurs to make the AI sound how you want it to. And once you do that, then it's like, oh, I can have 10 different team members that are all interacting with this, but it's always going to sound the same. It's always going to be on brand and consistent. But with what all this turns into is like again, with Swell evolving into what I'm describing as like content marketing powered by AI, like this platform for this. Imagine like I can just plug my blog, my Webflow, site into Swell. And I'm like, okay, like this is our target customer and like go grow organic traffic. And like the whole point of all of this organic content that we're writing is to get signups to occur, right? So it's like we just plug in Google Analytics, you have that sign up event, so you know what you're optimizing for, and then this like flywheel can be spinning for you, and that's 100% possible right now. That's like where we see this going. I think it's just going to be a layer within this overall like content marketing like engine thing, rather than its own component that was spun out. And the reason for that is because the general knowledge of the AI, like, and it makes sense, right? If I go interview 5 hotel marketing experts and I'm like, what are strategies for 2024 on hotel marketing, right? If I take those transcripts and I write a piece of content based off of those 5 transcripts, that post that I'm going to get is going to be so much more valuable with like insight and nuance and novelty in comparison to the general knowledge of the AI, right? Like the general knowledge of the AI is going to be, and it makes sense, right? All these LLMs are trained on like the internet. Like think about the average of the internet. Like it's pretty terrible, right? So I mean, and there's all this other stuff that you can do, which is even crazier. Like you could you could fine tune these models basically based off of the front page of Google. So it's like, cool, like we see that posts that look and structure like this, that's the output that we're looking for. So whenever you're writing SEO content, like this is how you want it to be. You're going to do it in this format. So there's all these things that you can do, but it really just comes down to capital. Like if you want to go train or fine tune some of these models, like again, my friends at FSF Compute, like it's like at least 5 million basically, right? To like basically just run these GPUs for 3 weeks to get the outputs you're looking for. And there's all these tricks that are starting to happen, or like interesting ways of like doing way more cost-effective fine-tuning that is starting to occur, which is super exciting, especially for us, where it's like, oh, we think now we can fine-tune like any user on Swell, and this is something we're working on, is like, could we get it down to like $1 to fine-tune a model for them, and then, or even $100, so it's like a one-time cost. We fine-tune that, and then it sounds like them, it writes like them, we basically can like create this own, and also creates a product lock-in for us too as well, right? Like this is where this, and I think, last thing I'll leave with people is like, what is the moat in all of this? I think the moat is workflows. Like nobody wants to chat with AI. Like once I figure out how to get the AI to do the thing, like I just want the output. So once I figure out how to get it to make that output, I want to save that as a templated workflow. And then I want to just give it raw materials, and I want to say, okay, make this output for me. And like, that is what Swell is. Like, we're just basically like a content marketing workflow template building system. So it's like, and the analogy I keep using is, hey, we take oil, like this raw material, and we turn it into plastic and gasoline and petrochemicals and all these different types from the same source. And it's that same idea applied here. We're just giving you, here's the source information. And can we repurpose that, remake it into LinkedIn posts? Can we make it into Twitter threads? Can we make it into clips? Can we make, whatever these media types that we need to make our company grow? So.
Well, there's so many things you talked about there, like from the cost of GPUs to, like as a funny aside, I was in my past life, as a co-founder and co-CEO of a big computer vision company. I was at this big OEM's head office, and they had a GPU cupboard, Cody. And one of my engineers, I'm like, I wasn't allowed to photograph it, but I'm like, this would be like 50 Christmases. Like it was just like they had everything. They had like every NVIDIA GPU in there, like the training GPUs, like all of it. Yeah. Anyway, that was I at one point, my claim to fame in 2023 is I had the whole NVIDIA GPU catalog memorized. Not the gaming use, but the for AI. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But just to sort of tie a bow on it, in my opinion, and it's really interesting because I'm, from in front of our global audience, we're gonna for my new company, we're gonna take Swell, and we're gonna use it. And part of that is an unfair advantage. And there is a race for anyone who's read, Blue Ocean Strategies. And, there are so many companies getting spun up, and you think your idea is like the best. We have seen average products with outstanding marketing. How many of you remember the Snuggie, or you've seen My Pillow ads? Is My Pillow the best pillow? I don't know, Mike Lindell. Is it? I don't know. I don't have one, but we're talking about like products that just have ridiculous marketing, squatty potty, like all of those things, and getting out there in front of people, and eyeballs, and repetition. And the founder, like you said, if you don't have the stomach for it and putting yourself out there, I can tell you, I did not feel like taking a photo on the rooftop at that cocktail party last night, but I did it because people watching me, I know they get bored, and if they'll go find someone else to follow if I'm not putting out content all the time. And so, Cody, I love that you are hacking that. I love that you're giving your businesses this unfair advantage. And yeah, and you know, my gosh, I'm excited. I'm
No,
excited
I'm
to.
super excited too. I think that, what you just made me think of, and just the, final, again, another final thought for everybody is it's easier than ever to build product, easier than ever before. And so you really have to think about now, like more than ever, like what is the differentiator? And like for us, like it's the media, it's like, can we fine tune this and can we have all this data for our client? And that lives in us. And like, I'm trying to always think about like, how do I get my roots to go so deep in this company that like pulling out, us from it it would be fatal. Right. And that is, I think, the bigger play here with all of it. And I think also a part of this is like, as your user base comes on, like say, for example, we go train a foundational model for, clip generation, like a viral clip creation. Like we're going to have access to all of these people's social accounts to be able to go and find like, hey, clips like this perform best. Let's do more clips like this. And then, basically train it off of like, we have that data source. And so it's just finding all of those like layers into this. But I think product alone, like, is no longer the differentiator. I think it's now what it comes down to is like, do you have good distribution? Like you're going to have to figure that out. And can you create some type of like data moat that nobody else has access to, like on top of your user or your users? And otherwise there's no, I mean, the game, you just don't even start if you can't figure those two pieces out or figure out a path for, towards those things.
Yeah, or then that person needs to stay in the forest and not come out, is what you're saying.
Totally. So, anyway.
Well, Cody, thank you so much for being here. We'll put the links we'll put the link to Swell and Draft Horse in the show notes, of course. And Cody, I'm excited. We're gonna for the pause, we're gonna use Swell. I'd love to have you back. It'll be fun to.
Yeah, well, I'll come back whenever. It's super fun. I kind of have these rotating shows that I go on, and it's like, yeah, like we talked about this, and in reality, none of that happened, but this happened, which is, so it's fun that, this is the whole point of like foundership and storytelling. It's like bridging, that whole journey, and I mean, it's now. I saw this quote the other day, and I wish I was the origin of it. It's like founding companies is now like a sport that you watch, right? Like just like people watch F1, they watch founders build these things in public, and so it's like that mind shift and thinking about it in that way. This is like what you're doing is amazing. So again, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Well, thanks for being here. And for everyone listening, definitely tag Cody and I on social, give some feedback. You can always go to susansly.com, drop your feedback. Cody is super active on X and, LinkedIn, all of it. And with that, I want to thank you again, Cody, for being here. To everyone listening, God bless, go rock your day. And I will see you in the next episode. Well, hey there. Let's talk about Startup Diaries this week. I have been traveling. And so recently we purchased a house in Montana and we still have a place here in Scottsdale. So I went to Montana. The house still had boxes to unpack. And I got there and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So many things to do. Left from there, went to San Francisco, and it was so fun. I was with Dawn Dobris and her team and at Capital F, which is a venture fund, and they hosted an event on a beautiful rooftop in downtown San Francisco for founders and for funders. And it was great. I met some really incredible founders. I met some people who are committed to supporting the founders that, are raising startup capital. And it's interesting, the questions that you get asked. You have to really know what your elevator pitch is, what your differentiators are, how are you going to go to market, how are you going to acquire customers, and what are your next plans? So it's not just, okay, I've got a great product and what's your product market fit, and where those initial customers going to come from. But what's going to happen, in V2 of your product, V3, V4, like the questions that I got asked were very interesting compared to questions that I've been asked before. So it was fascinating to see, and the tide is definitely changing. Still less than 2% of women-led pitches to traditional VCs are getting funded. And when you're a brown woman or Black woman or women of any kind of color, that is the most recent stat I heard is less than 0.1% of those 2%. So it's very, very small. It's okay. Now mine, when the odds are stacked against me, it's like, okay, let's just do it anyway. So it was a lot of fun. And then I flew back to Phoenix and then flying out again to Atlanta for cocktails and conversations. And so I want to talk in the Startup Diary about a few things I do to stay healthy, and and what I do when I am in hotel rooms and I can't sleep. So, the first thing is really around routine. Regardless of the city I'm in, I have the same routine, and I wake up and I have a very strong cup of black coffee. And thank you, Starbucks. If I'm traveling, I figure out where the closest one is, and I get my coffee, and then I spend about 45 minutes just praying and meditating. And I heard Joel Osteen say once that if you want something for yourself, you need to pray it over others. And that was the summer of the pandemic. And I said, okay, I'm going to I prayed for people before, but I was like, I'm going to go really all in, and I'm going to start praying for others. So I have a big list of people. I have people who have cancer. I have people who have family challenges going on, caring for aging parents. Maybe they have a child who's got some challenges. I have friends who are in business, and the list is big. I think it's maybe over 50 people now. And so I do that. And then I write out some gratitudes for the day. And then it's definitely time to get my workout in. And when I'm traveling, I have to give myself some forgiveness. So it's not always like a hardcore workout. It might just be, a power walk and some weights. It might be a run, something just to, I know I'm going to feel better if I get that workout in than if I don't. And then after I do that, I'm getting ready for the day. I travel with protein shakes. I also travel with vitamins. And that, for me, I find it helps to keep me healthy. And then, I also, at night, I take a lot of natural stuff to help me sleep. And so I have a sleep spray I take. I do a ton of stuff. And being a woman in menopause, I try a bunch of menopause supplements, it's like, I'll try it and see. And that those are some of the things I do. And the other thing I do is I always journal. So I'll say, okay, what are my wins for today? And then I'll say, what are the wins I want for tomorrow? And I learned that from the Dan Sullivan strategic coach, because he said your wins, when you say, what wins do I want to have tomorrow, that the subconscious is working on them as you sleep. And it's been interesting since I started to do that, I might say something like, a win I want for tomorrow is someone new is interested in investing in the company. And sure enough, I got a LinkedIn message from someone that was watching my post on LinkedIn going, hey, I'm interested in investing in your company. Right. So it's, I would love to say that there's a science to that. I don't know. But the thing I will tell you is it's just been part of my daily routine, and it's been super effective. So anyway, that's the diary for this week. I am candidly a little bit run down this week for some reason. I don't know, something I ate, just feeling a little bit off, but I'm charging through. We have a very focused mission. And as a CEO and a founder, I have to show up whether, I want to or not. And so getting ready to pack up again, get on the road again. And if these diaries are just something that I am hoping is helping you as a founder. And so drop a comment below, and definitely do share it out and tag me. And if there's a topic you want me to talk about in Startup Diaries, just let me know. And you can always go to susansly.com, send a contact form about, whatever it is, say, hey, Susan, I'd really like to know, whatever it is, how much water you drank, or how do you manage stress, or whatever it is, or what are your best tips for networking. Please do send those. I'd love to have some topics to share with you. So with that, God bless. Go rock your day. I will see you in the next episode of Startup Diaries.